You're listening to Inside the Minds podcast with Dante Marsh and Ryan Hyde, where we talk about sports, life, and whatever the hell else we want to talk about.
31-yard penalty to support pass interference call against the Lions this year. Curly into the hands, and there's Dante Marsh with the block. And it's going to be a pick six for the veteran. 29th career interception. Almost on cue. 80-yard return for the 10-year veteran.
Today's guest played 16 seasons in the NHL with the Calgary Flames, Quebec Nordics, Vancouver Canucks, and San Jose Sharks. He's got over 3,000 penalty minutes in 815 career games. Please welcome Tim Hunter. How's it going today, Tim?
Doing great, thanks. How you doing?
I'm awesome, thank you. Did you ever have any brush-ups and warm-ups around center ice?
Well, once in a while, you would try to send a message if there was a previous game where something had gone on and there was a guy that needs to be, and a lot of times you didn't have to fight. You just, basically told the guy, listen, you act up tonight. It's going to be much different than the last game where you got off scot-free, where you took a 10-minute penalty in the end of the game and got kicked out. So you didn't have to be accountable for your actions. You're going to be accountable from the moment the puck drops until the last whistle. So just a little warning there, pal. And that's how you talk to guys like that. And I was talked to the same, I would just laugh and say, bring it on. Nobody intimidated me, but at least you got the warning and they give you fair warning that was coming.
Yeah. We had a kid in Bantam, for those Port Alberni people out there, anybody that knows the name Ryan Kiefer, in warm-ups in Bantam, playing against that team, Ryan Kiefer would come over to center, hit the blue line with a blazing slap shot and just bury one on our goalie. And nobody would stand up to him. So he would just do it. Nobody would say, hey, like, Kiefer, this isn't happening tonight. So yeah, he'd just come over and start shooting pucks at our goalie and we just stand there and watch him. So
yeah, wow. Well, that's a shame that those things happen, that the referees or the league doesn't step in, and the other team's coach allows it to go on. I think that's very, very classless in minor hockey for another coach to allow a player to do that. And not to address it and say, this is not right. You want to act as a bully, do it when the authority's on the ice, the linesmen, the referees, and they'll hold you accountable. Where you're not held accountable in warm up is a shame.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you remember about the 1979 NHL draft?
Well, it was really interesting. My manager in Seattle called me and said, Tim, there's some draft rankings coming out. You're ranked number 14 out of top 25 underage in Canada. You're probably going to get drafted here in the draft. They're moving the draft from June to August, and they're going to have an underage draft. So you want to get yourself an agent to represent yourself. And so I'm like asking for recommendations. And I found an agency to represent me, and they just said, well, we've talked to some teams. There's lots of interest, and just hang tight. Mm-hmm. So normally I'd go to work with my dad in the morning, and I don't remember the day, if it was a Thursday or Friday. I can't remember it right now, but I didn't go to work. So I stayed home all day, just waiting for the phone call if I was going to get one. And, in the afternoon, I got a call from David Poyle, and David Poyle said, congratulations, Tim. We drafted you to the Atlanta Flames, the 54th pick in the third round of the NHL draft, and confirmed address. We're going to send you a letter inviting you to training camp, and we'll get everything all organized and have you to training camp first week of September. So it's pretty surreal. It was, and it was quite amazing because it kind of came out of the blue in a lot of ways. I had a lot of friends that were 18 and 19, especially the 19-year-olds. They're all expecting to be drafted, and none of them got drafted because the teams went with all these underage players. And then all those other guys were signed as free agents later on, and even some good underage players. So, short draft, 6 rounds, not a lot of players taken. It was just a quick thing. And I know it was spurred on a bunch of legalities of the underage movements with all those baby bulls and everything, those guys that were wanting to play in the NHL at 18. So it was quite incredible to be drafted. I never expected it. I played 1 year junior and had a great season. I thought had lots of development, and I was one of the toughest guys in the Western Hockey League as an 18-year-old. So that really helped a lot.
Yeah. So being born in Calgary and being drafted by the Atlanta Flames, how did you feel about playing your first NHL game with your hometown Calgary Flames?
Well, it was quite amazing. And, I'd, been down in Atlanta after my last year at junior in Seattle, and had a knee operation. I was at David Poyle's house. And he said, "I've got some good news for you." He said, "The team is moving to Calgary." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's real good news." Yeah. So moving forward, I knew I'd have a chance to play in my hometown. And then in my second year, I got called up just before Christmas. And I had this funny conversation. I was talking to Lindsey Carson the other day in Calgary, and he said, "Yeah, I remember, Hunts, you were at the airport with us in Chicago, and you were flying into Calgary with us. We were on the same flight." And so we were exchanging stories about that. So going into Calgary with the Flyers in the same plane, I was like, "Oh boy," Bobby Clark and all these guys. It was a little intimidating, but once the puck dropped, it was just another hockey game. And here it was. I'd played my whole life as a defenseman, and I played my first game in the NHL as a left winger. So it was foreign territory to me over there, and I adjusted and got used to it pretty quick. And by the third period, I ended up fighting Glenn Cochran, my first NHL fight, and I think I did okay.
Was there a reason for that change to move you to left wing?
Well, when they changed the roster from 19 to 20 players, Cliff Fletcher was in Seattle, and he came to watch me play, and he said, "Tim," he said, "you're going to play in the NHL. You have that character, and you have that toughness, and you have that will." He said, "It might be at another position. It might be at forward, because, we're going to need some big, strong forward guys. And, we're going to lose guys like Willie Platt and that along the way. And we have some other young guys like Jim Poplinski and yourself who'd like to fill in those holes." And said, "So don't be surprised if one day you're going to play on the wing." So that's kind of how the groundwork started. Excuse me.
So we had Theo Fleury on last year, and we talked to him about the Battle of Alberta. And he was saying basically that the guys were swinging their sticks to hit bone, and said it was pretty intense. What do you remember about the Battle of Alberta?
Well, it was hatred. We hated them. They hated us. They were better than us, and we had to become better than we were to compete with them. And that's what drove us, and that's what drove the organization. Cliff did all those maneuvers and moves to get us in a position to compete against them. But it was survival of the fittest. And I talked earlier about the kinder, gentler society, and I would never have said a word to another Oiler or anything off the ice or been friendly with them. Every player absolutely hated each other. It was just total despise, and you were trying to hurt guys. And it's human nature. We did what we could get away with. Kevin Lowe talked about if there was one guy that really bothered you when you played, who was he during his Hall of Fame speech. And he talked about me being that guy that could get under his skin and he could do nothing about, because he couldn't fight me and he couldn't do anything other than accept it and play through it and hope, that Dave Semenko or Marty McSorley or somebody would help him out along the line. But he had to play through it. He found it to be very intimidating and very unsettling. But the champion that he is, he played through it. And, it was like sometimes you felt you were like spitting spitballs at a battleship. You were getting nowhere. But I guess I got somewhere because he made comments like that.
What do you think about Wayne Gretzky always hiding behind the net when things got out of hand?
Well, Wayne was very, very smart, and he knew how to minimize the impact of the physical game on himself and, take advantage of, if a team wanted to play rough and take penalties, he was going to make sure they scored in the power play to make us decide maybe we shouldn't take as many penalties or the game is going to get out of hand. And Wayne Gretzky would score right to the end and run the score up. He wasn't afraid of doing that.
No, definitely not. What are your thoughts on running the scores?
Well, there's respect and there's disrespect. And respect is, when another team is just having a bad night and, you've had some luck and you just don't do it. And you don't cheer on when you're scoring your 10th and 11th goal or 9th goal or 8th goal or 7th goal. You just kind of forge on. And sometimes you're trying not to, but it's hard not to. And but if you've got a team where you're up 3 or 4 goals and they want to try to be physical and pound your stars as a deterrent, then you're going to run the score up on them if they want to pull that stuff.
Yeah, I guess a lot of that comes down to probably respect too for your opponent. If you want to run the score, maybe they are having a bad night. Maybe you're like, okay, guys, let's just take this one, mail it in, kind of thing. Whereas maybe it's a team you absolutely hate. You're like, and like you said, maybe they're getting physical too, and you're just gonna pound them and make them pay for it. So,
yeah, well, here's an example. The year I coached the World Juniors in Vancouver, we were beating a team quite heavily, and I had a player out on the ice, and it was, the score was well over 10, and he was cheating the play to try to score a goal or get a point because he hadn't had a point in that game, and I talked about him in the media, and maybe I shouldn't have. But I felt it was a situation where that was disrespectful to his teammates and to the other team to try to cheat the play to try to get a point in a situation like that. You're up 12, 13, 14 to 2 or whatever it was, and you're cheating the play to try to add to your personal endeavor. I felt was very disrespectful for the game, his own teammates, Hockey Canada, and the opponent.
Yeah. So we have George Larocque coming on the show, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We're still trying to schedule a time. And I know from hearing George talk about things, George never liked to fight. George was scared of fighting. What did you think of fighting? Was there anybody you didn't like to fight? Did you enjoy fighting? What's your take on it?
Well, I don't know if you ever enjoy it, but I was never afraid of anyone or ever afraid to fight. I trained very, very hard to be the fittest guy on my team, if not in the whole NHL when I played. And I trained with Willie DeWitt. I trained in the boxing ring, trained with boxing coaches. Did all kinds of different things to prepare myself that if I was in a fight, that I was not going to lose.
Yeah,
that's really a big difference between a lot of guys. They fight to try to win, and they expose themselves, and they forget that if you make one wrong move in a fight, you could end your career and literally your life if you make a wrong move. And a lot of guys get concussions and they're laying on the ice out cold or a pool of blood because they made a wrong move during a fight. That was not my modus operandi. I was fighting to not lose, not embarrass myself, embarrass my team, and make sure that whoever I fought knew that he was in a fight. And I was quite capable of hurting him if he made a mistake.
Yeah. And obviously think twice about fighting Tim Hunter.
You bet.
So I heard a story about you and Rob Ray in Buffalo in a preseason game. What happened with that story?
Well, that was the fun part of those days, a bit of the Wild West. We're playing Buffalo and Vancouver, and I don't know, we usually don't play a team like Buffalo in the preseason. It's close to home. Calgary, San Jose, LA, teams that are Winnipeg don't have to travel too far to play in Vancouver, but for some reason we're playing Buffalo. And Rob Ray had been around a while, and I knew Rob Ray, and I knew what he was all about. And it was late in the period, and he's spouting off and trying to intimidate Pavel Bure. He got out there against him one time and cross-checked him. Then he came to the bench, and the benches are very close together in the old Coliseum in Vancouver. And he was barking at Pavel, and I just looked around the glass and told him to shut up.
Yeah.
And I said, "You're only being tough because we won't see you till February or March, and you're going to get out of here unscathed." So he, give me the shut up, you old fart, and all this. And I said, well, okay. So the linesmen and referees came over, and I kept it going because I knew we were going to get kicked out of the game. It's exactly what I wanted. And they threw us out of the game. So in the old Coliseum behind the benches was just stanchions that held the seating up because they moved the seating back. So I quickly went underneath the stands to see where he was, if he was coming out, but he was still too busy kind of barking at the referee. So I went down my runway, down the connecting runway, and down his runway. And he came off. When he came off, you come out and it's dark, and you come in and there's light, and there I was standing. I said, "So how do you like them apples?" I was right in front of him. I said, "You got nowhere to run and hide now." I said, "I don't have to wait till March to get you."
Wow.
So I fought him right there underneath the stands, and I was on top of him, pounding away. And this big hand reaches over and grabs me on the shoulder, and he says, "Fellas, you got to end this. We can't have this here. You're going to get in a lot of trouble." And I look, and it's Pat Quinn. Pat Quinn had come off the bench because he seen me go, and he broke up the fight. And so we broke up the fight, and nothing ever happened of it. But I got a couple of good licks on Rob Ray and sent my message. I didn't have to wait till March.
That's awesome. Speaking of Pat Quinn, do you have any other Pat Quinn stories for us?
Well, my most favorite story about Pat Quinn was he's this big, imposing guy. And I learned this later on when I was coaching with Ron Wilson. Ron Wilson was assistant coach at the time, him and Glenn Hanlon. And so we're in Winnipeg, and we had a really terrible first period. And the old Winnipeg arena, they had these big 45-gallon drums as garbage cans in the dressing room. And so Pat comes in, the team's always in the room first, and Pat followed us in. And he swats one of those Gatorade jugs, big 5-gallon Gatorade jug, across the room like it was a Gatorade cup. And we're like, ooh, the big boy's not happy. And then he laced into us with all this barrage of useless, lazy, poor hockey, this, that, and the other thing. And then he boots the garbage can. And I'm kind of looking at it, and the garbage can never moved. And then off he goes. So years later, I'm coaching with Ron Wilson. I'm his assistant. He says, "Hunts, do you remember that time in Winnipeg when Pat kicked the garbage can?" So I'm going to tell you a story. He says, so Pat kicks the garbage can, and we're kind of standing by the door. And then we go into the coach's room, and Pat follows us in. He goes, "How was that, guys?" because it was a bit of an act. He just wanted to rile us up. And Ron says, it was pretty good, but how's your foot, Pat? He goes, Jesus Christ, I think I broke my toe. I kicked that goddamn garbage can. Ron goes, well, it's half full of cement, Pat. So Pat had a means to his madness, I guess you could say.
That's awesome. Who were some of the toughest players you fought against?
Well, Dave Semink was very tough, but he was a guy that didn't play by the code. If people talk about a code, there was no code with Dave. He wanted you to fight. If he had to sucker punch you, and if you got a little bit of him, he was going to kick you, knee you, scratch you, gouge you, some way to get even. So Dave was very tough. Marty McSorley was real tough, and even my first fight, Glenn Cochran, was very tough. Big guys, much bigger than me. But the guy that probably was the most, the one fight that I really don't want to fight him again, was Nick Fotiu. I'd fought him in New York in Madison Square Gardens, my first time in there. Excuse me. And I had beaten up Don Maloney early in the game, and I thought, well, I'm going to get out of this game alive here. There's like 40 seconds left. We score. And I hadn't seen Nick Fotiu all night. And then Bob Johnson throws me out for the face-off, and I'm like, okay. I go out, and over the boards comes Nick Fotiu, and I'm going, oh, darn. I thought I was going to get out of here alive. Nope. Nick Fotiu is coming over the boards. So we line up the face-off, and Nick Fotiu speared me right in the inside of my leg, in that nice tender area just up by your groin. And then he gives me the, come here, pal. So we drop the gloves, and I'm a little young, a little dumb, and I step a little too close to him. He reaches out to grab me, and he grabs a hold of me, and he throws a punch. He's pulling me and punching at the same time. And I'm coming towards him, and I duck my head, and he hit me right on top of the helmet. And he just blew my helmet right off my head. I still haven't found it. I don't know where it went. And I'm like, OMG, if that had ever hit me in the face. So we wrestled to the ground and never really had much of a fight. And I just remember that moment going, that's one powerful man. I had big hands. And when I played later on, Nick played for the Flames. He fought Craig Cox in Vancouver one night. Coxie wanted to fight me, but Nick grabs me. He goes, I'll take care of this. I think it was, he hadn't fought yet as a Flame, so he wanted to show everyone he could fight. Well, we knew he could fight. So he's fighting. They start the fight, and he hits Craig Cox right in the left orbital bone and breaks his orbital bone. And it was just like a sledgehammer hitting a pound of flesh, and it crushed his orbital bone, and Craig just shaked it off. But at that moment, I thought that would have been my face in Madison Square Gardens about 7 or 8 years earlier. And I would thank God it's not me. So I knew the effects, and that was just a reminder of the effects of Nick's punch. So I would say by far, Nick Fotiu.
Just be happy that you had a helmet that blew up, right? And not your face.
Yeah, for sure. And I was lucky to do that. You always try to make your face and your front of your face a small target, so you turn it into a long oval by tilting your head. And I was smart enough to know that. And my helmet took the brunt of it, and thank God.
So after Calgary, you played one season with the Quebec Nordics. What was that season like in Quebec?
Well, it was a lot of fun playing with all those young guys, Owen Nolan, Joe Sakic, Matt Sundin, Curtis Lecision, Adam Foote, Mike Ricci, just outstanding. The only problem was Quebec they were a real low-paying team, low-budget team. Marcel Abou was running the team. My contract with Calgary had expired. They had to qualify me to play in Quebec, and they just offered me the same contract I was playing for the year before, because we were going to go to arbitration. But they also offered me a 2-week contract. And I said to Pierre Paget, I said, it's like, seriously? He says, well, we'll work things out. And, so I played did the right thing and played hard and was a good soldier all year. And, Tony Twist was there, and Tony was a very tough kid, and helped him out and helped do my part to lead the guys. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Ron Hextall, we had Ron Hextall, just amazing athlete, guy to be around, just so intense, so competitive. And being in Quebec was fun. Our family liked it. We immersed right in the community, and but they just weren't coming around to pay me. I could never get to arbitration. So I went to Pierre and said, you're going to have to do something. I want to play 3 or 4 more years, and this is not going to work if you're not going to pay me here. So is there any way you could trade me or put me on waivers or do something so I can, move on here? So he put me on waivers, and I signed with Vancouver, and Vancouver picked me up, and then they signed me. So that was a great thing for my career, playing in Vancouver. Man, the fans, the team, Pat Quinn, that whole atmosphere was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Did you have any issues with the French language in Quebec?
No, not at all. It was in old Quebec, it's tourism. So there's lots of English and lots of people that'll, help you out. In the rural communities, they're not really big on helping you out. They're speak their French, their French culture. And if you try, they're kind of look at you like, that's not very good. So it's a little different, and I understand their culture, but some of the funnest things, playing in the outdoor rinks in the Plains of Abraham in the winter with my friends, and just going out there as a guy to play outdoor hockey, and the kids are kind of going, that looks like the Nordique, and they come up, are you Tim Hunter? Fun things like that. And the snow started in October, it didn't end. We left the end of February, and it was still snowing. Just amazing amount of snow there, and that was fun. It was a great thing to put my family through and to experience, and no regrets.
So I accidentally got my notes mixed up, and we skipped over the Stanley Cup win in 1989 with the Flames, which was your only Stanley Cup, although you played in 3 and coached in 1. Take us through that Stanley Cup run with the Flames in '89.
Well, it was not unlike the one we went through in Vancouver. We had a great team, but we had to get going, and we had trouble in the first round against Vancouver. They were this ragtag group of guys that weren't going to take no for an answer, and they were just kind of hitting their stride at the right time. We had a real tough time with them, but we got through Vancouver, and it was a big sigh of relief through the whole organization. We had built the team to win a Stanley Cup from our '86 loss to Montreal, and Cliff retooled the team and added more pieces to win a Stanley Cup, and that was our goal. But getting past Vancouver was tough. But once we got past Vancouver, it was, we had so much confidence. It was really clear sailing. We just knew we were going to win. It was just a matter of by how much or how many games it was going to take us. And even right into going into Montreal, we were confident we were going to beat them in Game 6. We were going to fly home with the Stanley Cup, and that's what we had as a team. All great teams talk about why you're successful. The number one thing they talk about is the players being close and playing for each other. And Terry Crisp had a great way about molding us into a group that cared for each other, and we were going to play for each other. And we did. We were very close. And even to today, I just moved back to Calgary after not living there for 30 years. And there's 9 players that played on that Stanley Cup team that live in Calgary. And we've got a real tight group. We do a lot in the community for the Flames and for the Flames alumni. And it's just fun to be part of. But, all those years later, you're still connected. And it's so true. When you look across the room and that guy over there is not going to let you down, so there's no way you're going to let him down, or the guy beside you. And that's what we had. But we also had the confidence that we were going to win because we had great goaltending, We had great defense. We had a great power play. We had great penalty killing. And it was just a matter of us, everyone doing their own collective job. And all these are cliches, I know, but cliches come from great things. And that's why you can, when you've lived it, you can talk about it. And it was a very special group on that team. No one had ever won a Stanley Cup before. So it was kind of rare. Cliff Fletcher brought in John Tonelli, a little bit of experience early on to show us the way. And then he was gone, and we learned from John Tonelli. And it took everyone. There was guys that played, guys that didn't play, but everyone contributed, and it was a total team effort.
I'll never forget Lanny McDonald hoisting the cup.
Yeah, it was really special for Lanny. That was going to be his last year. And there was Håkan Lube was going to retire. And not everyone knew that. I knew that. I was very close with Luber, and he had enough. He wanted to take his family back home to Sweden, and little things like that. The city of Calgary, being from Calgary, and knowing how hard it is to win, losing to Montreal in Game 5 in this '86 Stanley Cup was a big blow, but they were a good team. They had some great players, Hall of Fame players. But on the flip side, in '89, we were a very confident team.
Was there a feeling of revenge against Montreal when you beat them in '89?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. There was, it was funny, and they used to have this thing called the Stanley Cup Luncheon, and they don't do it anymore. So they have the Stanley Cup Luncheon. It's in Montreal. It's in between Game 2 and 3, and so we go. They've got this big luncheon, probably 1,000 people, speakers, all this stuff. And they introduced the Flames, they introduced us, and they just rattled through number 2, Al McGinnis, number 3, so-and-so, number 4, right through the lineup. Didn't say much about anybody. And then it took them about 5 minutes to introduce us, and took it probably 40 minutes to introduce all the Montreal Canadiens. It was like a pep rally for the Montreal Canadiens. You're in Montreal, and then everything's also in English and French, and it was painful, and we thought it was very arrogant of them, which it was, and so little things like that, and kept hearing these things, the ghosts, the forum, and you're not going to win in Montreal, and that. We're like, we're going to win in Montreal. We've got a good team. And we did. And the one thing that was very special was how classy the Montreal fans were when we won, and they handed the trophy out. They all stood and gave us a standing ovation and clapped for us, basically for a long time, until we took the cup off the ice. The rink didn't empty out. They were there and watched it. And that was special. That was really, really interesting to see. And of course, to be able to win in Montreal, the first team and only team to ever do that.
I was just going to bring that up. The only team to hoist a Stanley Cup in Montreal was the 1989 Calgary Flames, which is pretty special. So, all right, let's get into it. The 1994 Vancouver Canucks. What were the team expectations heading into the season?
Well, definitely to be competitive and make the playoffs. And Pat was trying to build a team to compete for a Stanley Cup. And, we just slowly got better and better, and started to, Pat had a different way of handing the team over to the players to get them to kind of self-police and motivate each other and carry his message. Terry Chris was a little more rudimentary. Pat's was philosophical and deep-rooted. To get the older guys and the players to lead each other and care for each other, and it really worked. So we had a special group, and even to today, it's again, we didn't win, but I feel really connected to all those guys. Jeff Courtnall, Trevor Linden, Cliff Ronning, Kirk McLean, all those players, Dave Babbage, Dana Mergen, just a special group. John McLean and Gino and, Sean Antosky, that group that I played with a lot, was a lot of fun. And, we built confidence a lot slower than that Calgary team did. Beating Calgary was huge. Obviously, we had to, they were the team that won the division. We had to get by them. But we were that little train that could, and we just kind of chugged along and slowly built momentum. And Pavel was spectacular. Greg Adams, these guys just, we had a lot of guys that could score and a lot of guys that could compete. Serge Momesso, big, tough guy, but Serge could score. These guys that were competitive, and that's what Pat built, a big, tough, mean team. We had some rugged defensemen that could bang bodies, and yet we had some real skill back there with Jeff Brown and Jyrke Lume. They could really make plays and dangle with the puck. So as we went along, we just got better and better. And, Pavel kind of found his way. I remember Pat saying to me before the playoffs, you're going to have to, we're going to run into some teams that are going to bash around Pavel, and you're going to have to, help out. And I said, well, Pat, I said, I never play with Pavel, and that's hard. And I'm going to try my best to make guys accountable. And I said, but, if Pavel's lined up against Shane Churla, I'm not getting out there against Shane Churla. I said, Pat, you got to talk to Pavel, and I'll do the same, and get Pavel to kind of, take care of his own battles now and again and send a bit of a message. And, so we're playing Dallas, and Shane Churla is all over Pavel. And out of nowhere, Pavel elbows Shane Churla and knocks him out cold on the ice. And I don't remember if Pavel got 2 minutes or 5 minutes, but he never got suspension. And poor Shane Churla was out cold, but he had been bullying Pavel pretty bad. And to get by Dallas, we definitely needed Pavel. And he took the game in his own hands. And I remember Pat coming down, he goes, boy, that sure worked on the bench. And I was like, yeah, I knew Shane. I had played with Shane, and, I was buddies with him. And I was like, holy mackerel. That was a vicious, I'm sure you've seen it on YouTube. That's a vicious elbow as you ever seen. And
I have seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Pavel got himself a little bit of room after that. And, those are the things that it takes to win, to develop a team and to get guys to compete to win.
Yeah. I wonder where Pavel learned how to throw an elbow like that. Right.
Yeah. I'm sure he had a lot trying to throw at him when he was skating by guys 100 miles an hour and dodging elbows. And maybe it was Gino that showed him, because Gino and him were really close. And, Gino, he knew how to throw an elbow as well.
Yeah. So talk to us a bit about the moves that Pat Quinn made at the trade deadline in '94. He added, Jeff Brown, Jeff Courtnall, Sergio Momesso, and I'm sure there were others.
Well, we also got along the line, we got Marty Jelena on waivers and Brian Glynn on waivers. And it turned out Brian Glynn was a big acquisition because Dana got hurt. And, I had Brian in Calgary, and, Pat was always funny. He never knew anyone's name. He'd say, hey, Hunts, that big left shot D guy there, the guy you had staying with you in Calgary that had the weight problem that you lost a bunch of weight living with you. He's on waivers there in Ottawa. Yeah, they got another guy there, Jelena. He's on waivers with them too. I said, you mean Brian Glenn? He goes, yeah, Brian Glenn and Marty Jelena. Yeah, those guys. He says, you think I should pick him up? I said, well, I seen him in Edmonton. He was really good. And Glenner, he's the same as Brian, as Dana Merz, little overweight, but he can play. And he might be a little bit better with the puck than Dana. Not sure, but he can play. He's rangy. He's got a good stick. Sure, pick him up. So we pick up Brian Glenn, and contributes right to the end. And the other guys, well, Jeff Brown, the pass he made to Pavel on the winning goal in Calgary, just, across 3 lines, right at the blue line from the top of his own circle. Phenomenal play. And just being on the power play, we needed that other, Yerke was really good, but Jeff was just a little better. Plus being a right shot, Yerke was a left shot. So we had 2 weapons. And, Courts was fantastic. Jeff Courtnall was, just a guy that could score, could skate, play physical, wasn't intimidated, and was a pain in the ass to play against. And a great guy, super guy, was great in the locker room, funny man, always pulling practical jokes and being that, that fun guy in the room that you need, keeping guys loose, teasing Cliffy Ronning about the way he taped his stick, all kinds of fun stuff. So great group of guys, and Pat knew what he was doing. And, it was like Cliff. Cliff had a bit of a in St. Louis of prying players out of there. That's what got us over the hump in Calgary with Gilmore and the trade we made for Gilmore and Walmsley, and then Pat making the deals with St. Louis to get Cliffy and Lamesso, and real crafty general manager, little known great coach.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people thought that Toronto would have won the Western Final. What were your thoughts on that series?
Well, they had a good team, but we just seemed to I don't know. We got underneath their skin, and they just couldn't get anything. Kirk McLean was fantastic in that series, and Doug Gilmour was hurt, so Doug Gilmour wasn't 100%, and he had an ankle problem. And I remember running over him behind the net in Vancouver, and I knew he had this move where he drove wide, spun back, and came out around that right side. So I went down from the right wing and saw him. I knew he's going to do it. And he comes around the net on his back and with his head down. And I just timed it and ran over him. And I hurt him worse, I learned later on. And so, they weren't 100%, but, nobody ever is in the playoffs.
No.
I think our guys just grew and got better as we went along.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about the Rangers series. Obviously losing in Game 7 to the Rangers. Nathan Lafayette's post with 6 minutes left. What do you remember about that series?
Well, there were so many ex-Oilers on that team. It was like old home day for me, playing against Anderson and Messier and Lowe, and it was but they just had a little bit more than we did. They obviously, the travel was a big factor. We were beaten up and tired. I think there's a photo of Kirk McLean and Trevor Linden hugging each other, and those guys were just exhausted. And the Rangers, they probably traveled about a fifth of what we had to travel. They traveled like 20,000 miles. We traveled 75,000 miles.
Yeah.
Just to get to the finals. All the flying, Toronto, Dallas, Calgary wasn't so much, but Dallas and Toronto, that was a lot. And then going to New York and having to go there a second time for Game 7 was a lot. So, and we were beaten up as well. Pavel was hurt. It wasn't 100%. So, but it was a real thrill to do it. And my dad was in Montreal in '89. He had just retired at 65, and then I took him for dinner the night before Game 7 in '94, and it was his 70th birthday. So it was pretty special. Those little things that you remember years ago, but just the camaraderie and the opportunity to play for a great team like the Canucks was a real thrill to play for the Canucks and to play for Pat Quinn.
That whole run for me was like a dream. I was in grade 9, I think, grade 9 to grade 10. And the whole thing just seemed unreal as a Canuck fan. I remember like 88, 87, Vancouver, I think lost to Winnipeg, or just barely making the playoffs, and then, just not making the playoffs. And then you get into 94, and the whole run just seemed like an absolute dream to me. And it's something I'll never forget. So,
well, all the games that went to overtime, double overtime, and the heroes, Greg Adams, Jeff Courtnall, these guys that scored big goals, and, Cliffy Ronning, and Kirk McLean, he was just outstanding. I think, in the end, Mike Drichter was just a little bit better than Kirk was. Mark Messier was a special player, and he really galvanized their team, and Trevor the same on our team. And, they had a little more experience. They had many more Stanley Cup wins than we did in Vancouver. That was for sure.
Yeah. So I know you're a big fan of pictures. You just talked about one that I have. I've got one of Kirk McLean and Trevor Linden hugging after Game 7 that's autographed, and it hangs down in my man cave downstairs. And that's another moment that I'll never forget. So that one's pretty special.
Yeah, it's fun stuff to have memories as you go through, as a fan or as I've got some special things that I keep on I call it my wall of shame, not my man cave, just all the things that you have on your wall you've collected over the years, and lots of fun stuff, lots of fun memories, and just the team pictures you play with so many guys over your career, and so many teams, guys come and go, and to be able to look at, I have all my team pictures, to be able to look at all the guys that you played with, that coached you, assistant coaches, it's a special special thing to have in your life, that you can look at all those and have those memories.
For sure. That would be pretty special. Tim, do you have about another 10-15 minutes with us?
You bet.
Awesome. Great. So you retired as a player after the 1997 season, playing in 815 career games. What was the decision that led you to retire?
I had enough. I was beaten up pretty good. I had a back injury earlier in the year in San Jose. Went to Washington, flew all day, and then played the next night. And at 37, I was it took a little while longer to get going. And early in the game, I ran into a brick wall called Steve Konowalchuk, and my back locked up, and took me about 5 weeks to recover and get back playing again. And I had signed a contract with San Jose to only play 40 games, and bonuses to play more than 40, but 40 games for, half the games for half the money I was making in Vancouver, more or less. And so it was a good deal. I got to retire on my own terms, and I knew it was my last year, and San Jose was a fun place for my family and the son and what have you. So that was it. And I had told, during my stay in Vancouver, Pat Quinn, George McPhee, Ron Wilson, Steve Tambellini, and then again in San Jose, Dean Lombardi and Wayne Thomas, these guys that I wanted to stay in the game in some capacity, preferably as a coach. And if there was any opportunities, I'd be more than willing to listen. And, I got that opportunity in San Jose. They offered me a job to work with Daryl Sutter, Paul Baxter, Roy Sommer as the fourth kind of coach, third assistant. And about 2 days later, George McPhee called me and offered me a job to be on Ron Wilson's staff with Tim Army, and be Ron, myself, and Tim Army as a second assistant, and have much more responsibility. And it was a better opportunity for me as coach. So I made the decision to go to Washington. But to be able to retire on your own terms, to know this is your last year and you're not going to play again. And it was an easy decision to make, because I was just, at 37, I'd played as long as I wanted to. And that's all you can ask if you're a pro athlete.
I guess it starts taking a toll on the body too, obviously, right? Like training camps, that kind of stuff, you're waking up in the morning and it might not, you're just not there, right? So
Yeah, and your body doesn't react the same as you get older. You know, I was able to play to 37 because I was such a fit athlete all those years, and being able to compete because of my because of that physical conditioning. I was able to have that longevity.
Yeah. So how did you find the transition from playing to coaching?
You know, it was great because you're 3 feet from the action. The game was fresh in your mind, the way the teams were being coached, the systems, it was all that. And Ron Wilson was really great as a boss. He let me be an entrepreneur in my own position. So I got to try new things, experiment, and coach the way I felt coaching should be, and not the way other coaches coached or the way I thought it should be, that I could create my own kind of style. And he let me grow and experiment. And he said, you know, Hunts, being a coach, if you make a mistake, these guys are just hockey players. They won't know you made a mistake because they don't know what you're trying to do. And so we'd have a laugh. And it was true. The players were great. They were very understanding. I was a new coach. I coached the defense in Washington. We had lots of older guys and lots of younger guys. So it was fun. I got to learn from the older guys and help teach the younger guys the game and give them opportunities. And, you know, first year in the NHL as assistant coach, we went to the Stanley Cup Finals. So what's better than that?
Yeah, no kidding. I was just going to talk about that too. Playing Detroit, you guys unfortunately lost. But like you said, I mean, what better than that is first year as an assistant coach in the NHL, and your team's playing for Stanley Cup. So
yeah, great environment. George McPhee was the ultimate boss and a great guy to work for. I worked for him a couple of times in Washington, and treated us really well. And we had gone through that transition of playing in Landover to moving downtown at the new MCI Center, and transition from ownership from Abe Poland to Ted Leonsis, and more fun stuff to experience in pro sports and go through those those new environments and the new way of doing business in the NHL with these new super centers and the sports complexes with the entertainment center and not just a hockey rink.
Yeah. So that relationship with Ron Wilson obviously started in Vancouver.
Yeah, Ron was assistant coach, and you know, he was great because he was always on the ice first with me and working with me, and last, and then, you know, video, and I hang around the room. I was always trying to learn, and you know, Ron was a great mentor and teacher, and we had lots of laughs, and Ron had some great stories. A real funny guy, and like to listen to his stories, and yeah, and you know, and so when Ron got the job after he was fired in Anaheim with George, and you know, it was so much fun because those two guys are great guys. They're both really funny, and I got to tag along and had a super mate as well, and Tim Army, another real bright coaching guy as well. He coaches in the Minnesota organization in their minor league team in Iowa, and super people. Made my 5 years in Washington a real treat.
Yeah, definitely. So what went into you becoming a coach with Team Canada for the World Juniors?
Well, I, you know, signed on with Moose Jaw, and it was my first year in Moose Jaw, 2014. We didn't make the playoffs, but you know, Al Miller was involved with some of the scouting and things with Hockey Canada, and I think recommended me to the group at the time, Scott Salmon and Ryan Jankowski, to possibly coach their U18 team at the World Championships in Switzerland. So I more than happily took the job and coached the team, and it was a great opportunity. It's some of my own players there, and you know, coach some of the best juniors in the next 4 years. Thomas Chabot, and some of these guys were incredible players. So that opportunity kind of paved the way to the opportunity for the World Junior Championship in 2017. Applied again and was asked to be assistant coach with Dominic Ducharme's team, and we had a great group again. It was a fantastic opportunity. Losing in a shootout and getting a silver medal was, disappointing, but the Hockey Canada felt that we didn't win a gold medal, but we had a gold medal performance, and they asked them back the following year. So, it was a great opportunity again, and special guys, Dominic Ducharme and Joel Bouchard, just real super good hockey guys and fun to be around. When you're coaching those teams 4 years, U18 and the 3 years the U20, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of planning, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And like what you see, what just went on with the World Juniors being canceled, you just look at all the people that had to do all the logistics to get all those teams there, all the volunteers, all the media people, television, and then all the teams and players and their families and parents. To have it canceled it just puts an end to everything. All of a sudden was just devastating, I'm sure, for all those people. And for me to be have the opportunity to coach in 3 of the World Junior Championships was a thrill of a lifetime. It was a great honor to be part of that, to be a head coach and assistant coach, to win a gold medal, a silver medal, and a bronze medal with Hockey Canada 3 or 4 times was very special.
Yeah, that's a big accomplishment for sure. I was a little shocked, I guess, about the tournament being canceled this year. You get a couple guys. What was it? One player, I think, on the Russians, was it Team USA, and he had their game canceled. I was a little bit surprised that they ended up canceling the whole tournament with a couple guys, with COVID. But
I think in reality, what they look at is the how fast it travels, and they want to, and say what you will about the Omicron, whether it's debilitating or not, it's still people getting sick from the virus, and that's what they wanted to totally avoid, because they felt with fast it travels, and they've had lots of case studies with, just look at the NHL, how fast it goes through hockey teams. I'm in Calgary, and I'm the Calgary Flames and doing things with the alumni and with the Flames TV and stuff. And from day to 5 days to 30 people having COVID in the organization. And that's, snap your fingers, there's 30 people. So they're looking at and going, if we don't nip this in the bud right now, we're going to have multiple teams with multiple players with the virus, and all these guys come January 4th, 5th, they have to travel home, and this is going to be worse. So I think it was the right thing to do. As a fan, obviously you don't like to see that, but I think by far it's the right thing to do, because all these young hockey players, they have to go back to their billet families, to their own families, to their own teams. And you want them to go back healthy and not have to sit and wait in Canada and quarantine and not be able to play with their club teams when they're ready to, when the tournament's over. And just look at the, Mark Masters gets it. They had linesmen and officials get it. And then the players on the playing team. So it was going to travel really fast, regardless of what happened. But I'm sure, in hindsight, is always 50-50. You can look back and go, if we could have done this or done that, but obviously it didn't happen. So, it's live and learn.
Yeah. And I know there's talk of hopefully playing the rest of the tournament in the summer of the upcoming summer. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. They've done that. They did that. They found their way around a couple of other tournaments. I know last year at the U18 tournament, they played in Texas. They found a way to organize getting some teams in there to play that tournament, give those birth year players the opportunity to play in that tournament at the U18. I'm sure they'll give these guys an opportunity, not before the NHL draft or in and around it, it'll be a great opportunity for those young hockey players.
Yeah. A couple more questions, not too much longer, Tim. Assuming that the NHL is able to play a full season this year, and I sure hope so, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup this year?
Boy, that's a great question. And it's always interesting. You know, there's teams that are legitimate. Tampa, Florida, you know, they're the, you know, I guess the teams in the East and the West, you know, Vegas, you know, you never know with teams like Edmonton, Winnipeg, Calgary. You know, Vancouver's slowly coming along. I don't know if they're Stanley Cup material, getting better. They were a lot better than they were when I was into Vancouver earlier in the year and watched them play. They play a much better game. Yeah, that's a good question. There's lots of teams capable for sure. But like anything else, everything has to fall into place. Everything has to go your way. COVID, injuries, players playing their best at the right time. So the likely candidate are obviously the easy choices, but there's, you know, Calgary, they just seem to be a team that is hard to put away. They've gotten a lot of good elements out of their team this year, good goaltending. The defense have defended well. The team has defended well as a team, and they've gotten enough scoring to win games. So that's a recipe for success right there.
Yeah, for sure. I think if Vancouver can stay on the path they're on with Bruce Boudreau coming in, you know, if they can creep into the playoffs, maybe they can do some damage as well. So Stanley Cup winner, I doubt it, but you know.
Well, they're playing a game that's more conducive to the clientele they have on their team. You know, the personnel they weren't able to play the type of game they're capable of, and they should be playing, and now they are. So it's fun to watch the Canucks for sure. And you know, some teams that are slow getting going, and they'll come around. And then it's just a matter of, again, with all these situations, being healthy at the right time.
Are we going to see you coaching again in the NHL, maybe as an assistant or a head coach?
That would be the only time I coach again, as if I coached in the NHL. I've had lots of opportunities to coach in the junior and American League, but the NHL would be it. My last year in Moose Jaw was going to be my last year coaching junior hockey. I was going to either try to get back in the NHL or retire, and it all worked out fine because of COVID and the state the Warrior organization was in was perfect timing for me. And this is my second winter. We're only a week away from being in Arizona, where we spent last winter. So I'm looking forward to that, and that's what retirement's all about. I'm a big fan, so I watch a lot of hockey. I was at almost every Flame game this season, and then I was lucky enough to get out to Vancouver and get to a Canuck game and watch Canucks Colorado play. So that was a fun endeavor as well.
Yeah, that would have been a great game to watch. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure. It's always fun to talk about hockey, and the easiest thing you can talk about is yourself.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inside the Minds podcast with Dante Marsh and Ryan Hyde. Check out our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter accounts to see our upcoming show announcements, links to our previous shows, and sound bites. And don't forget to hit that follow button while you're there.
Hey, this is Logan Bandy.
Hi, this is Zane Frazier.
This is Art Jimerson.
Chris Rainey.
This is Boots Electric, and thank you for joining me on my special guest spot on Inside the Minds podcast, where everybody wants to be if they're smart.
Good field position start, play action. Burr's going to load it up, but he's short on the throw. Intercepted. Dante Marsh has his 30th career interception and a good return back into Ottawa territory. Well, the usually strong-armed Henry Burris comes up short.